So Phil and I have been here starting to figure out what we're going to discuss today. And what has been looming large on my mind for the past few days. And when I say the past few days, it's when I finally took some action on it. But I have withdrawn more and more, even from some of the tribe that want to focus on the things that are wrong, that does not keep our vibration high. When I keep talking about vibration, and people ask me, how did you get there? How do I get there? It's, keep joyful thoughts, just start right there. And you don't get that by rehashing all the crap that had happened before. It didn't hurt that I was reminded of, Buddhist beliefs, and they're about living in the moment and extracting every ounce of pleasure you can out of this. Don't look back, don't look forward now, because this is what we build on for what we want. We manifest the things that we think about. And if somebody doesn't understand that concept or it's foreign to them, spend a little time with that thought. Observe yourself when you think pleasant thoughts as opposed to negative thoughts, and you tell me where your vibration is. But when I want you to share a little bit more about what you were just talking about, Phil, because it helps when it comes from somebody other than me. And like we were talking, I love when these are exchanges. It's not, this was not meant for me to sit here and spew about the things that I know and the things that affect me, because we're all on different journeys. So I want to hear you repeat the perspective you were just talking about, and then I have something to add, okay?
Cool. Yeah, when I jump on here, I feel like I have a need to kind of bring up my past and talk about the addiction and talk about some of the challenges that I've been through. And, I guess I try not to come from a place of being the victim. I have some awareness of my past, how I got to where I got there, but I'm sick of my past trying to dictate my future. And it's easy to get caught up in the mistakes and the things that I regret and whatnot. But for me, it allows me to kind of recognize where I'm at, how I got here. And I love having the awareness. The idea of that thoughts create our reality, it's a fairly new concept for me. And kind of really trying to get engaged with my thoughts. And I do have control over my thoughts. I could have a fantasy of having a beer on the beach at the end of the day, and I could easily take that thought and wander down and take it as far as I want. Or I can realize it's like, I get to choose and start to create a new reality. And then rather than going down that path, it's what do I want? And I can actually kind of realign my thoughts of where I'm going versus where I've been. So,
well, let me chime in for a moment, because I want to illustrate the distinction between what you were talking about and your life. Because in order to make any changes at all, we have to be an observer, and not an observer of the things around us, an observer of ourselves and our behavior. Because until we notice that it's not really going the way we want, and I take the time to ignore the white noise around me and start to focus on the things that I think, well, then it's a little bit easier to determine, how did my vibration drop? Well, I guess when I don't do anything but spend time on this, I can see where my vibration would not necessarily be what I want. Having said that, we all need to go back and understand what happened along the path, because there are always lessons in there. None of those things are mistakes. They're lessons that we signed up for. Additionally, I know that between incarnations, we return to, I guess the more common term for everyone to understand is the angelic realm. I see that as this is the fourth dimension. We go there and we get our next assignment. We determine our next soul contract. We make agreements with everyone who's going to help us along our journey then. But when we're ready to ascend, and we're not going to repeat lessons, we're not going to play another 3D experiment out, here is where we need to clear out our karma. So we need to analyze what had happened in the past, because there's a lot of karmic cords that we don't realize we still carry. And until we stop to talk about those things, at least to think them through, there are cords that we have that we don't realize that we did. In fact, that happened over this last week. I was in a session with Cindy, and I kept hearing, there's something you need to release. I listened to the occasional, tarot card reader lately, and they kept saying, you just need to release something. Well, from where I'm sitting, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position. And I have a command over my thoughts, and I actually direct my life, and I know where it ends up, and it feels pretty good. And when I get to share these things with others and hear their perspective, I didn't feel as though something else had been lingering out there. Well, the universe has answered one of the things I really wanted. There was a relationship that has been looming for 50 years that is now, the cycle has been completed. And I'm not here to talk about that, but it's just another means of the things that are meant for us are eventually going to come our way when things finally line up. Here's one of those examples. This whole idea of unknown karmic cords that may exist. How do you do anything about that until you get some framework from somebody else? And here's where you want to sit next to your most intuitive friends. Absolutely. Because they can sense when energies shift. I love it when they sit right next to me, because that vibration, and we're going to expand upon that a little bit more, because there's messages coming from the Lemurians that everyone needs to hear. And there's a little bit more encouragement coming for all of humanity. But until we can release those karmic cords, we're just stuck where we are. Now, some of those cords may be associated with people who aren't with us anymore and have, they moved on to the next incarnation. So how do you cut those cords when you finally realize that they're there? Well, you can use a Ho'oponopono prayer, forgive me, or I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you, and just let it go. But until we place some awareness on it, we're always going to be stuck with the cycle. And until that's gone, it's more about awareness. Do you have something to add? Go ahead, Tal.
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up. I listened to Dolores Cannon, and she talks about cutting some of these ties, but I always come back to this. How would I be capable of knowing that I need to cut those ties from this 3D reality? Like, wouldn't I want to do that from the angelic realm or the other side realm or a higher level realm to know whether that was a decision I really want to make? Does that make sense?
It does. You need to clear your karmic load out in order to ascend past 4. If you don't, you've got lessons that you clearly need to repeat. Here you go again. You got to come back here, and you have to play this experiment out again. The difference now, especially now, when we know that whatever this shift in consciousness coming Earth's way is imminent, that the time for us to go back and maybe re-examine those karmic cords, that we need to do that now. We need to do it now. Because if we don't, I don't know what happens to the souls whose awareness don't match the vibration that's to come. And I know for myself, I don't want to be among them. I am ready to ascend. We've all heard about what New Earth offers us and what we contributed to that. That's what I signed up for. I'm not interested in playing these lessons over again, and neither is Gaia. So until we embrace that, and we'll get some help from others, when we can cut karmic cords with a person, that's really the most healthy way to do that, because you almost feel feel a sense of relief. Um, Back in June, when I was aware of who Sam the Illusionist is, and that came by way of a Australian filmmaker, Adam Rikys. He's been traveling around the world and recording extraordinary phenomenon. And one of those phenomenon was Sam. And Sam's a young man who lives in India, and he's been channeling higher beings for some time now. And when you listen to him, you know that this isn't him, taking on some other voice print and saying the things that come out of his mind, because those don't come from a human mind. And they come in such a way that they're just profound when you hear it. And when you hear it repeatedly, you know that this guy is legit. Well, among those beings that he channels is Lemurians. Adam had come across him because he had heard that Sam was capable of channeling the Lemurians. A few months before that, Adam had gotten wind of my story and Shasta and Telos and the Lemurians, and he wanted to kind of go to the source. I think that's one of the reasons why he sought Sam out, so that Sam could give him a perspective. So what Adam wanted to know after he said, yeah, I heard about this guy, Lowell Johnson, who said that it's in fact there, that he's been there. And Sam, what Adam wanted to know is, what can you tell me about it? What's it like? What's their technologies like? And Sam said, well, I've never really asked those questions before, but I can tell you this, that the Lemurians do tell me that when they're broadcasting, it's from Mount Shasta. So that was enough for Adam. Now, Adam wanted to share that information with me. While I was at the conference in Shasta this year, we had been exchanging information back and forth, and Adam had sent me some shorts that Sam had done so that I could listen to them and see, what I thought of them and how they resonated. Adam made his way here, and he was coming from Croatia to get to Shasta for a 2-day window that would overlap, where he and I would have an opportunity to, have this conversation. And he could actually, touch the guy who said he's been there. He had asked me when I saw him, he said, well, I'm going to actually reach out to Sam. Is there anything you'd like me to ask him? Is there anything you want to hear from the Lemurians? And there wasn't really anything I could think of, but I sure as hell was interested in what they'd have to say about me, right? Of course. Well, I didn't know that he did, but he reached out to Sam and he'd recorded it in like a Zoom session. And so I had an opportunity to go back and listen to it. The first part of it, which is relevant to what we had been talking about before. Adam had 3 questions that he wanted to ask. First, he wanted to know if, while he was here in Shasta for the week he was going to be here, whether he could visit Telos. 2, he wanted to know more about Telos. He wanted to understand about their technology and anything that they were willing to share. And then the third question is, what can you tell me about Lowell Johnson and what his purpose is? So the first question was answered, and that the Lemurians granted him access. Now he's going to have to travel there astrally. He wasn't going to be able to get to go there physically. His reach into higher dimensions hasn't quite matured to that level yet, like mine, but he was welcome to do that. Now, I say that, and I want to emphasize that just because you say you're going to Telos, you're not always invited by the Lemurians. That, table has to be set as well. But it appeared as though Adam met the criteria for them to say, yes, you're welcome to come and visit. Secondly, he was talking about, he wanted to know more about the technology that they've got and the promises of what they've got to share with us, once all of this comes back together. Sam kept repeating the idea that the most important thing to the Lemurians is their vibration and keeping that high, that their consciousness is what was of value to them more than anything else. And that the concept that their technology comes from consciousness. because without consciousness, you have no creativity. You can't create anything. And I had to even sit back and just take that in a little bit more. He went on to say that this vibration that we communicate with the Lemurians are, because they don't speak languages. Somehow they translated into a form that of English when I was there, but it's vibrational when they speak. And they had gone on to say in the middle of that more of us were going to be in a position to help others understand the vibration so that they could do it and they could assist others. And that's why you are an excellent example of this. Here you can hear whatever this rally is, whatever the call was to people that now have heard Cindy speak light star language, call it what you wish. All of a sudden, that's a trigger. Well, that's why it's been triggered. Because those of you that have been triggered that way, you understand vibration to a level that you don't really comprehend here yet, but it's been there latent for a long time. I remember when you told me about your instances when that happened to you when you were a young boy, and you went, I don't know what that is, and you just tucked it away because you didn't know what to do with it. Then Cindy came along, and all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute, there's something to this. And when you finally just allowed yourself and released, holy cow, look what came out. You, like some of the others that have come up, and I've heard countless people that have reached out to me on Messenger or something saying exactly the same thing. Here's why. We are going to be in a position to help others understand and translate the vibration because the Lemurians want to communicate with us in that way. But we have to learn how to do that. So we're kind of taking baby steps so that it's almost like we're passing the baton off. I'm not going to be the only one, although he said, yeah, vessels like Lowell, vessels like Sam, they can understand the translation and they can translate it for you. But that's not our job. It's not like I'm going to sit around like Aristotle with a bunch of people here and all you're going to hear is from me. No. Once the trigger has kept, now here is how the circle grows, like geometrically. Because once we in our little circle have heard and you kind of get your vibrational translation part of you activated, now you go out and there's another pool for you. You're going to have your experiences with people that have come along. Now they've heard you. You were the trigger for them. And they, in fact, in turn, are going to be triggers for others. So you see how this is happening? And it's no surprise to me anymore. I've been doing this survey along the way here to really people that have reached out, especially the ones that claim, yeah, something's been in my aura, in my field for a long time now. And I had questions about it, but who to ask, how to go. Somehow, we've come across their path. Those people seem to be in this, whatever this was, whatever phenomenon took place, has been within the last 2 or 3 years. Not to say that there haven't been people who have been metaphysically, inclined to, nourish that part of themselves for a long time, decades. But the more and more I see those people, I just get a sense that their message has been muddled, because now it's more about, they become an enterprise, and it's about likes, and it's about, charging for information. And I can appreciate we still need to figure out a way to live in this realm. And, money is the energy that lots of things get done here with. But when it becomes that's all that it is, it's just sad to see that happens, because we kind of had somebody that was there and they just slipped back into 3D. No matter what they say that they know, you can understand that this isn't really coming from a place of higher intelligence anymore. That is really what spawned this whole diatribe I put out the day before yesterday about thoughts become things and don't spend your time on negative issues. And, I don't like to say don't, won't, you should. It's not in my vocabulary. And I mindfully try not to do that, because if I recognize we're all sovereign beings, it's not up to me to tell you what to do. I'm here as a resource for everybody when things vibrate. And here is where, we go to people that we can tell have had some kind of connection so that we can establish our own. Not necessarily to listen to the words that Lowell says, because my journey is different. I doubt now, and I'd always hoped, after Telos came into focus and months after, I thought, well, there's going to be opportunities for other people to go that same way too. My thinking now is that that's highly unlikely. That was my journey, and that was how I got there. That's not to say that others won't, but they're going to find a different way to get there than the way that I did. The Lemurians are there nonetheless, and they have now instructed us and told us it's time, according to Sam's interpretation, for all of humanity to understand that language and that vibration. That's why I am thrilled to see the people that have been triggered, either in sessions or they've heard Cindy. Look at what it's done. Look what it did for you. Look what it did for Robin. I mean, the people that have been in our tight little tribe for a while, and they're blossoming into a whole another level of service. And here it is. So now it's up to us to just kind of use it, learn to live with it, because it's going to come into use very soon. So I'll stop for a moment because I'd like to hear your feedback, bud.
That's a lot of information.
I know, right? See what happens?
No, I love it. I keep going back to vibration and karma. So for me, I'm aware of karma. I'm aware of some of my previous karma. I know today I don't want to create any new karma, but I catch myself still creating new karma, which is going to just make me repeat the lesson. And I recognize people, places, and things that absolutely lower my vibration. There's times when I know my vibration's high. I know when I connect with a stranger without saying a word that they can feel it, but I also can feel my vibration drop when I walk into a certain environment or if I'm around a certain person. And I think I try to look at it, so clearly I'm creating my reality. So I've got some responsibility around me lowering my vibration, apparently choosing to, or I'm aware that it's happening. And
that's really the start. The fact that you're aware of it and you take action to do that. The action could be just, you don't want to be in that environment anymore. And so here is a really good example where, the environments and the people we used to hang with, now when we recognize when we get there, something just feels off. It's not that we knowledgeably say, I can't stand this anymore. I doubt that I'll spend any more time with you, but inherently, we just kind of back away from that. So that when we find that space, we don't want that disturbed anymore. When you feel the vibration I feel, you don't want anything by that. You talked about karma, and there was one other thing I wanted to point out, because we talk so much about lessons and how we signed up for those things. We expect to make mistakes because those are lessons that we were supposed to learn on behalf of ourselves. And once we've learned it, then that's a contribution to the collective. But there's another little twist to that. They're called trials. And trials is when we insert ourselves into somebody else's business. That we just created a karmic cord, not just for ourselves, but for somebody else that needs to be cleared in a manner that wasn't necessary. What business was it of mine to give some judgment on somebody else's condition when I don't understand their journey and I don't know where they are in it? All I get to do is respect what they're going through and allow it to happen. Because if I do, in the end, it's going to benefit all of the collective when we let people learn their lessons and play them out, instead of me, inserting myself into the scenario. With the hurricane in Florida that hit hard, a place I lived, I had been through Hurricane Charlie and suffered what it was like to be displaced from my house for over a year before I could get back in. When I saw a graphic of Charlie against what Ian was, we were really fortunate because those areas in some places are impassable. People are stuck where they are right now because they can't get out of the areas that they are unless they're being airlifted, they're boated off the places where they are. And so I have been privy to some conversations about people that are looking at relatives that are still there. And while they're here, they're going, well, they probably planned, they didn't plan properly, or they didn't do this, or they didn't do that, or why didn't they do this? And oh my God, stop. First of all, we're in no position to make decisions on what other people decided to do. And now that they're there, I've heard things that just sound silly to me. Well, why don't they just, drive to a hotel? Because we don't know whether they can get there at all or not, or whether their car has gas, or whether the gas station they get to has gas, or whether the trees that are blocking all the roads have been cleared. We don't take any of that into account. But people that aren't ready to hear that. So again, as much as we want to be there for them, all I want to do is just back away from the conversation, because again, you're just going to drop my vibration about things we have no control over. If you want to do something and your light shines, send that out to them, because that's all we're in a position to do. All you're going to do is just muddle all the rest of the people around you and drop their vibration too. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I know when this Ukraine war broke out, I was really emotionally affected by it, and I was getting on TikTok and trying to get updates, and I don't want to see what's going on Fox News and the other, I want to see what's really going on there. And I noticed it really started to affect me to where I had to shut it down and not participate anymore. I still feel for what's going on over there, but I've decided to step away from it and not be so engaged. And I'm also really cautious about the way I judge other people's situation. My dad's a great example. My dad's getting older. He's lived his life the way he chose to live. And for me, I use it as an example of, I'm not going to die unconscious like that. I'm just not. There's just no judgment of how you've chosen to live your life. No judgment whether you choose accountability or to pretend that things didn't happen. So I've learned a lot around that. It's like, he's on his own path. It's not my own business. What I have is I get to take whatever information I can take from it, apply it to me, try to raise my vibration, try to increase my awareness. And, I pass that information on to my kids. I pass that information on to, I came from a large family. I was talking to my brother about it the other day, and he was talking about some of his traumatic childhood. And I brought to his attention, I said, maybe you chose those lessons. Maybe you chose Dad for a reason. And he's like, whoa. And I said, just spend a few minutes and just ponder it, and just maybe it's a different way to look at it, and to let go of some of the judgments that you have, but look at some of these lessons that you've had that are a true blessing. Like you have a perspective that there are a lot of other people don't have because of some of what you perceive as negative background. And what was other interesting is, like, I was down in Costa Rica with my 80-year-old mom, 4 of my sisters, and 1 of my brothers, all working with ayahuasca from a very hardcore LDS religious background. That was interesting. But yeah, I work on coming from no judgment. I'm here to gather the information for myself. Maybe I make it out harder than it needs to be. I get caught in this 3D reality. It's like I'm still trying to make a living. I'm still trying to find more flow in my life, manage the relationships with kids and wife, and understanding that there's certain changes I need to make, and especially with my environment. But it's hard to kind of get that all figured out and wrapped around, and you've been kind of repeating these certain patterns for several years. Now that you have some awareness around it, putting that plan together and being able to follow through with action and staying conscious, present, keep your vibration up, and it's easy to get sucked into that 3D reality when most people around you they want to talk about conspiracy theories and the government and manipulation, and it's easy to get caught up with that. I too am aware of some of that type of stuff, but it's like, well, what's the solution to keep talking about the negativity? And I heard someone talk about the solution is by raising your consciousness. It's by raising your vibration. That's what's going to start resolving some of the world problems, even small problems at the local level. It's the more conscious and aware you are and raise your vibration, these things are going to start to naturally, come together. Corrupt politicians will start to go their way, and more conscious people will step into their place.
Right. That, to me, that's just the veils being pulled back. So now we see who these people act. I'm not going to call them leaders, because they're not leaders. They're not leading us anywhere, and we just give our sovereignty over to them. But you said the word solution, and that I understood solution-based thinking long before I got this awareness and whatever, my metaphysical kickstart was. When I used to listen to people before, I just got tired of hearing them bitch about the problem. And that's great. It's great that you've identified that there is a problem, but all I want to hear is solution-oriented ideas. And if you don't have that, then I'm not interested in listening to you bitch anymore. So I guess inherently, I had that sense about me before I understood any of the rest of this. That's what I really want to hear. If you have solutions, great, step up. Tell me how I can help. That's what I'm here to do. But if all you want to do is bitch, no, time to move on. And that was basically what rant came out on the blog the day before yesterday.
Man, I'm so with you on that. To go and hear the repeated conversations about just the negativity with no solution. It's like, dude, man, I am sick of hearing about it. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I'm with you, man. I'll be a warrior with you. Let's go take some action. Let's, like, whatever. You want to go march? You want to go, like, whatever. But, like, to sit here and bitch about it. And it makes it easier to identify. There's certain people in your life. Anytime a negative thing comes up, negative things need to be talked about. They need to be addressed. You need to assess the lesson, and then you need to move on. But there's some that just, once that negativity is there, they just want to keep going. And it's like, man, wow, this isn't for me. Like, dude, good luck.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. And it's not that I don't appreciate what people are going through. I, glean in, light is infectious. It helps when other people kind of see us, kind of rising above those situations. From this perspective, I understand where they are. We want those of us who can't stand injustice. We're helpless in many ways because there's nothing that we can do about a situation that comes from somebody else. I, of course, from time to time, when it strikes somebody really close to me and somebody's hurt, I too, there's a part of me that wants a pound of flesh back for that injustice that was done. But that doesn't perpetuate, that's not a solution-based and oriented solution, is it? It's not. So we just hold space that the others refuse to do because they just don't understand it until maybe the day that they do. But it gets harder and harder because the tighter the tribe gets, and the more that orbit kind of forms itself, you get tight in there, and any white noise from the outside, you try and bounce it off. But at the same time, we need to appreciate those lessons that are being learned on behalf of the collective, because they are. If we believe that at our inception, we were a spark of source that snapped off to assist source to learn more about himself, his awareness. We were cast off to help the universe evolve. That is our purpose. That's everybody's purpose. You have lessons to learn along the way that are different from everybody else, and your journey is different, but we're here to help it evolve. And so in order, in this 3D duality world, when we learn good lessons, by nature of contrast, we learn the bad ones too, or we wouldn't be able to appreciate this side. So here is where we just get stuck in that cycle. When we see the bad things for something other than just a lesson that we're learning, and you get stuck in that muck, now you can imagine why humanity has been stuck where it is. Because if you just go through just one quick skip through Facebook, most of it is people that are bitching about situations without a solution. I can see where there's a problem, and here's how I'm addressing it, but that's not what we're seeing. So, our ranks tighten up. Part of me wants to fix the problem, but the problems go beyond my capabilities and what I'm capable of being able to do. So all I get to do is hold space for the rest of it while it plays out.
Well, I imagine all of the dark energy that's going around the planet right now. It's just part of the process. It's part of the ascension. We got to, like the analogy of the wet dog is shaking the fur, just cleaning the surface. I was telling my daughter, we might see a couple years of chaos, but you chose to be here at this time, and you're going to have a better life. The world's going to be a better place than it is right now. I believe that in my heart. I believe all of this is happening for the better.
It absolutely is. The world is changing. We just need to adapt ourselves. And most people don't understand that they have that kind of influence on other things. We could talk about this and beat it dead. I just hope that others that are going to listen to this later, that it triggers something in them, and that dwelling on the things that have been lousy in the past only invites more of that stuff into your field. Here, I just sent that signal flare up for you so that you can stop for a moment and see, be an observer of yourself, and see where your mind is taking you, and tell me how you feel. Because here's the connection. You all want to know what vibration is and how you get there. Look at it from that perspective. You got to figure it out for yourself. No one on the outside is going to sit down like a psychologist and write all these notes and then tell you back what you have to do. They don't know your journey. No one does.
Yeah, I was looking, man, I'm guilty. I'm looking for it. It's like, hey, Lowell, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, man. And as I raise my vibration, as I raise my awareness, my consciousness, I watch my external world change. I watch more positive people that show up in my life that are here to assist rather than take or contribute to maybe some of my negative aspects. Fully aware of that. Definitely grateful. I think that as I listen or as we interact, you drop some tips that are extremely helpful. One thing is huge is looking at these life lessons rather than carrying around guilt and shame when you don't have any awareness or consciousness around that. Man, that can get pretty rough. We kind of touched on, living multiple lives, and like, how does that improve my now? And you said you'll be able to recognize some connections that you've had past lives together. I think when you have the awareness of that, you realize that you're interacting with someone that, hey, this isn't our first rodeo. I have a really good friend of mine. He went through his dark night of the soul and spiritual awakening probably 10 years ago. He's a California skater and was called to write a book about Egypt and the pyramids. And, it was interesting. I'm going through my addiction and probably treated him more than poor, shocked that he's still my friend. And then our conversations change and I start waking up and I'm like, we've done this before. And he's like, oh yeah, we've done this. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me? He's like, I've been trying for 10 years, man. Like weren't ready. And it was cool. I was able to thank him. I was just able to thank him for sticking around and being patient and loving me and being ready when I was ready. His book's amazing, by the way. It's called The Initiate, and he talks about the mystery schools, and he talks about I don't know. It was funny. He was mailing me books, and when I was in rehab, I started reading them, and so his book and reading some of the books that he was sending me is just a big part of my journey. I wish I had more understanding of how our past lives worked, but I have this belief that we probably walked around Egypt together, and
there's no doubt that you did.
And maybe we were initiates.
You definitely were. I wish I had figured out what that magic bullet was so I could tell everybody else what it was. But that's not how it works. We all are on different journeys. So I wasn't going to be that guy. When I came to that conclusion, that's when I understood. And Dave Wallace and I have had this conversation. And it's not that we're tired about talking about our experiences. I love to talk about Telos and what that was like. I'll never forget that. That's not anything that you can put on a shelf and come back to later. That just becomes part of who you are. But that's not going to help people. We know that really what will really help is to try and describe the process by how we got there. And maybe in there's some seeds of knowledge or a trigger that's waiting for you to hear that'll, launch your little ship off in the same direction too. And I have always been, you mentioned ayahuasca. The first ayahuasca journey I ever went on, I didn't really surrender to it because this little Capricorn part of me wants to understand the process. So I got 1 foot in this realm and 1 foot in the other realm, and you only come to the conclusion, well, you can't do both, so you got to decide which one. Do you want to learn what this is like and watch what the shaman's doing, or do you want to actually let Mother Ayahuasca work on you? And it took me the better part of the first evening to just set what I wanted to decide out of understanding the ceremony so that really the medicine could do its job. And it's no different than anything else. I tend to focus on the physical things now. And that's the interpretation I want to prepare myself to give others. So when we talk about we're getting this enhanced light in, I'm looking for the physical sensation. Because all you human beings want to understand how does that affect me? So if I can pinpoint the physical parts, that's what I'm focusing on. So when I was getting that upgrade 2 weeks ago, and I got that sensation across my back where my neck got stiff and my shoulders got tight. And, okay, where did that come from? Because that wasn't there a moment ago. And 15 minutes later, after this activation's taken place, it's gone. Those are the things I want to catalog so that I have that to call on. And that's the only measurement I have to offer to others in our human form. Yeah, that happened to me too. Those are the things that could be that happened to me too. But it still has a lot more to do with your individual journeys and figure out, how that all knits together.
This was your last download with Cindy?
Yes.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed listening to that. In the beginning, you could, I could feel the codes, like there were specific codes dropping in, and you could tell by the way she was delivering it. It was like, this is codes, data, codes, data. And then she went into when she went into work on the physical body, it was completely different. It wasn't those type of codes that she was dropping in. And then I think like 3/4, I've listened to it, you know, obviously a handful of times, probably more than that. And then like 3/4 of the way, she went back into more codes and dropping more code. And it's nice when she's able to actually translate it and say, hey, this is kind of what's going on. I would obviously love more input or translation, so you're more with it. But I was definitely able to pick on, that's code, and this is something else. This is more like she's working on the cellular level, DNA level. And then she came back into more code. I'm glad you shared that. I saw that go out.
Well, it took me a long time. I was mindful the second time Cindy had kind of knocked on my door, unsolicited. And you know, it's not that I had known Cindy that well. I had an instance with somebody that I got to be really close to, and Cindy just happened to be passing through town a day after Lisa and I had a Zoom session to discuss, you know, Telos. And when Cindy had heard about that instance, she said, I'd really like to talk to him. So Lisa had reached out, and the next day we're on a Zoom together. Well, that was the first time I heard Cindy utter, I call it light language then. Now I understand better, you know, how it's characterized as star language and why, but that doesn't really mean anything. I wish I would have recorded that, because I didn't understand at the time. I just kind of tucked it away. Just listen to it, take it in, and someday that'll make sense. So the next time I had an opportunity to do that, and you saw that with Zan and I and Cindy, there was more that was going to come out of that. And so at this time I said, no, I'm going to record this, so later I can go back and listen to it, because I wanted to be able to hear that language again and figure out how I was going to understand it. Well, mission accomplished. But that was very private to me, very sacred. Yeah. And it took me a while to come to terms with, you're supposed to share that, Lowell, so others can understand that. And if you're not willing to do that, they're never going to know. You're never going to help. Whatever key you're holding for them is never going to be realized. I thought about it again last night. There are times that I would just as soon shut up and never talk about this again and just reap the benefits of what I know and carry on until the shift. But that's not what I signed up for. The one with Cindy, with the actual activation from 2 weeks ago, I had to give that a little bit of time. Many of you had seen it, but I trusted who you were and where you were along your journey to be able to appreciate that, because that was where the inferences that were made in the first one became reality in the second activation. And that was very personal to me until I could really digest that. And I've listened to it at least a dozen times to make sure that I gleaned out of it everything I was supposed to get. It wasn't until the day before yesterday that I finally changed it from unlisted to public. And I've heard some other people, and the reactions and the comments I'm getting back are dear to me. Oh my God, something triggered with these people. So now I understand the reason why I did it and why it had to be public. Again, I'm not going to be the only one. I would be foolish to say that, irresponsible to even say that. I'm serving as a trigger for others to kind of get it, because the time that all of this is going to manifest is soon. And that is all I get to do. I get to tell you what the information is, and you have to discern for yourself whether that resonates with you or not. I'm not going to continue to hammer home and say, well, you consider this, you consider that. No, that would be me trying to shape shift your opinions, and that's not my job. I respect that you're as sovereign as I am. And in the same way I ask that you just respect my journey and let me do it, I'm going to do the same for you, because you're going to have revelations. That whole idea that we're individuals and we're unique and we have a special gift that no one else has, I understand how special I am and what gifts I carry. And no one has those things, and I understand what value they have. But you too, Phil, and everyone else who's listening to this has not a similar one, but a unique gift to offer. And in the fabric of the universe, it's incomplete without your piece. When one person with those gifts is in a room, it's pretty freaking powerful. Imagine two with unique gifts, and you pull those things together, watch what gets accomplished. And now when
Yeah.
the tribe forms, and now there's a dozen of us, oh my God, look what we get to do, because we're all co-creating at the same time. The idea of we're not quite sure what New Earth is going to be like when we get there, let me tell you, yes, we do, because it's already in our heads. We know what we want. And that idea that we can manifest what we want, there's no delay in the next realm. We get to manifest things immediately.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty vulnerable to share that information. And, even from my experience sharing some of the content that I have with my good buddy, and he's just looking me dead in the eye. He's like, "You're a total kook. Like, you're a total nut job, but I like you." And he's being super authentic and super honest. He's a straight shooter. He's like, "You're a fucking kook." And I'm sure you get the same type of things, but you're still able to, you see the benefit for the majority that are actually taking in that information and really applying it, getting something out of it. So good job.
Yeah, thanks for saying so. But that was kind of how I was built. I'll listen to everyone's perspective and see what I can learn out of it. I'm not going to necessarily take it, inherit it as mine, because there might be pieces of it that should be mine and they would benefit everybody. But I know that in the same way that I have my hands full living this life right here, and I respect that for everybody else, I don't want it shared by somebody else. Our whole lifetime was a lot of people telling us to do this or to do that, and you can't do that, or you should do this. Those words don't belong in the language of sovereign beings. So can you see how excited I am when we just get to go back to vibration, symbols,
Yeah.
colors, sounds to communicate with, instead of this word salad that we've been using that just tends to charge people in ways not necessarily always intended.
Yeah, I think there's larger chunks of there's larger chunks of information consolidated into these vibrations.
Yes, there definitely is.
It's hard to vocalize. Gosh, it's trying to explain someone what an ayahuasca ceremony is like in word form. It's really undescribable. And I had an amazing time down there. It was a real eye opener, and talking with some of my other siblings, it was rough. It was rough, and they're still trying to integrate and understand. And I guess I can understand that, because I went down there without any information or education 5 years ago. And this time, like I was saying last time I went down there, I was definitely on a spiritual path. I was definitely called to going and doing that. And it reminded me of the last thing between you and Cindy, because I feel like some of those same codes were coming down and coming in. And I'm like, this is definitely an off-planet code. And I was asking you, like, where is the source? Like, who are these codes coming from? And you're like, well, it could be coming from the various different things. And I was to tell you exactly where these codes coming from, but it was a higher level of intelligence. And I'm just laying there just trying to take it all in, and just smiling ear to ear and feeling it, really just being able to feel it was.
Well, here is probably that's validation of you got what I was trying to communicate there by the vibration, not by the words I said. Because, if you listen to Cindy, we don't understand her language, but we certainly get the vibration that comes along with it. Half of me being able to understand what she told me, and that was a revelation. Cindy and I are still learning how we're supposed to dispense this information that's coming. And I don't want to reveal too much yet, because I don't want to get people's expectation that I've got some solutions and I've got answers to, this new light that's coming, what it's doing to us, how we interpret it. I haven't been that ceremony with Cindy, that was mine. And there are codes that were given to me to suit me. And there's a whole nother what led up to that, and why that had been tucked away. When you had mentioned being able to tie back to our previous incarnations, when you can do that, that's when you have insight onto understanding what your purpose here is and why now, and what you carried from back there. I hesitate to talk about these things because the way that my guides have illustrated the things that have happened back there, I was royalty and I was a priest and I could do magic and transforming, negative energy into light. I could do that before, but when you say that, it's like I read it out of a fantasy book. So you never say those things out loud. The first time it was suggested to me that you're going to embody Thoth, you don't say that stuff out loud because you know what the reaction will be from the masses. Oh my God, this guy's fucking delirious now. And this is he's not the person you should be listening to. I totally resonate with that. But at the same time, they're trying to get information through now as quickly as they can in terms that we can understand it. Because we had never been taught about what Earth's real history was before. There was no classes, and our ancestors didn't feed us enough of it. And there was a point at which, we divorced ourselves from the whole metaphysical side of ourselves anyway, especially here in Western culture. We didn't believe any of that. We believed in all the physical manifestations.
Yeah.
And so you can see where it would be likely that at some point somebody would want to get greedy, because there's that element out there too. And now why Earth and the humans that are on it, who think they're in control, wonder if we came from anywhere else. Well, I can tell you, I put all those things to bed. I no longer worry or think about whether there are terrestrial craft. Hell, I can actually now, I've been keeping a folder of extraordinary phenomena that people have been passing along to me, videos and things that they can't be anything but communication from elsewhere. If we really thought that with all the planets that are out there, that we were the only source of intelligent life, and I say that in a qualified way, that's just a ridiculous idea. But again, we had never been exposed to any of that. None of our schools taught us any of that because they had never been taught that. So I can understand how that mentality just perpetuated itself over time. Well, that's not the truth. And that's whole idea that we're waking up isn't so much of a wake up. It's just revealing truths to us that resonate with us. That's when I bring up a topic, sit with it and see if it resonates with you. If it does, then you're automatically going to expand because you want to understand more about it. And if it doesn't, then it's great. I'm not here to hammer it into you. That's not my job. My job is just to expound what experiences I've had. And then you see if any of that resonates with you.
Yeah, clearly Thoth coming in or using you, or however that relationship works, you're at a vibration where you can allow and accept it. And then you also are such a sovereign, I don't know, just your personality. You're able to share that information without not giving a shit whether you buy or you don't. It's like, this information's for you or it's not for you. You just, that's not up to me. I'm just giving, here's the information, take it or leave it. So I can appreciate that. And, I think I touched on it on the last call was, I am looking for those steps. Like, what are some of the tips or pointers that I can do to improve my now, raise my vibration, keep my vibration, and then, getting to a level where I can be more open and receptible to the higher levels of information that I'm seeking. Information finds me in mysterious ways, and I'm always grateful. Something will come my way, and I'll pause for a moment, and I'll just do an internal chuckle and just give, thank you. The way that it came and the way that it's here. I
consider
enjoy
this.
it.
Our higher beings who are aspects of ourselves that are, they're walking along in the same timeline, just in higher elevated places. They have to find ways of communicating with us, because it's not like they can tap us on the shoulder, because we're not aware they're here. We don't vibrate at the same level, and we must vibrate at the same level of the things around us to experience them. So they have to find new and novel ways. There was a period at first when, after meditation had sunk in, I tell you this with great certainty, that it seemed like the only time I ever looked at the clock, it said 11:11. Here's where it started. And then you began to see those synchronicities play out in lots of ways. It wasn't just number combinations. You saw signs here and there when you paid attention and kind of stopped all the white noise around you to see what nature and, the universe had in mind for you. There had been a period of time in between where I didn't see that as regularly, but I think that kind of kickstarted whatever was inside me to kind of take over and, okay, sort that all out. But in the last 2 weeks, more, see synchronicities all the time now. But I know that the universe has been answering some of the things that I put out there, because some major things have shown up in my life that I was ready to do without.
So one thing I took away from our last conversation was, I'm kind of looking for this big, life-changing aha moment, but it was pay attention and pick up on these little subtle things that are happening all over, all the time. And that's one thing that I was trying to do. And I notice it more. It's the very light, the very small, subtle things that I'm trying to be more in touch with. But I'm also always looking for that tip or whatever, how I can connect to my higher self, how I can build that relationship. I believe through meditation and yoga, that is one of those ways that I can do that. So, like I was saying, being consistent with my routine and really being specific about what I want and what I want to create. I create my reality.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's still, for people that are going to hear this, that idea is a foreign concept. What do you mean you create your reality? Your reality is this. And I still, I don't know how to explain that. I was in a session the other day with a group of ladies that had somehow, heard about me, and they were part of a bigger group. And these 12 girls had kind of just snapped off. And I think it's been now for about a year that they've been getting together at least once a week. And, they share their experiences and, parts of their journey. They ask wonderful questions, and I could see them jotting things down. And I kind of laugh, because in my head, I'm saying, this isn't like I'm going to give you, here's a 1, 2, 3, 4-step process on how you get there, because it's not that. I can't tell you what your formula is going to be for you. But when we're together, here is where the magic happens. It's during these exchanges that your wherewithal comes back. And it wasn't because Lowell said, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to achieve this end. No, somewhere there was a word or a phrase that got you, meant for you. And when you take that out, it wasn't for me to say how I did it. It was providing an environment where you were going to be nourished with the information that was going to trigger you. That's when I get to see that and recognize it in somebody's face. Now I know I'm doing my job. That's where my juice comes from. When I see somebody finally get it, and not to focus on, okay, I recognize the negative stuff for what it is, and I know I need to put it aside. No, focus on that vibration and how that makes you feel. And your job, if you were to ask me, is just to figure out the way to maintain that. Because when you do, now those things that are around us, that are tapping us on the shoulder that we're just not paying attention to, or whatever, synchronicities they're throwing our way to get our attention, or whatever bird passes, whatever feather drops, whatever it is, however they're trying, we're finally in tune with it. And now we can receive those messages. The setting has to be right. And so, when we talk about all these elements that stepped up to it, we can't neglect any of those steps that I just described. And you go, oh, that's a lot to take in. Yeah, can you imagine? It got shoved into me in a 2-year period. And I felt like I'd been cramming for college courses for the last, 2 years. But I was supposed to get it fast. Apparently, I was built with the capacity to take it in really quickly, discern it out, because I'm not any different than the rest of you. It was still foreign to me too. And I had to figure out what it meant. I had to resonate with it. My guardian angel happens to be Namamia. She's the angel of discernment and hates injustice. Does any of that sound like me? Yes, it's totally me.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like to enhance those connections, but man, I value your time. I look forward to these interactions. I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
Well, this will be a good spot to stop. It'll be plenty for people to digest, and we'll see where it goes. So as always, I'm grateful that you're here, because I don't know how many of these one-on-ones we're going to get to have without making those intentional, and that'll be wonderful, because here is where the magic takes place. When we have these exchanges, that's when we learn something. It wasn't from sitting in, I'm not saying that books don't have value and videos don't have value, but it takes a lot of discernment to, sort it all out and figure out which ones have something for me and which ones I just spent an hour and a half on I didn't get anything out of. That's hard.
Okay. Till next time. Thank you.
Till next time. Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Everyone else, have an awesome day.
Yep. We'll see you, man.